There comes a time when life no longer asks for your permission. It simply begins to undo you. What you once clung to, what you believed was unshakable, begins to crumble. You may scream, resist, curse the skies above, but none of it stops the unraveling. And in those moments you wonder, why is this happening to me? But the deeper question is, what is trying to be born through this breaking? You see, we think strength is built by adding more, by gaining more, by protecting what we have. But real strength, true, unshakable strength is born only after loss. After the foundation collapses, after the identity dies, sometimes life has to break you not to destroy you, but to shake loose everything that is false within you. It is in those quiet nights, when the tears fall and the heart questions its worth, that something ancient within begins to stir. Not hope, not yet, but a kind of sacred emptiness. And from that emptiness, a new form begins to shape. Not one you constructed, but one life intended all along. The version of you that cannot be broken, not because it is hard, but because it has already shattered and come back softer, wiser, and infinitely more alive. We keep asking for peace, for growth, for awakening, but we do not realize that sometimes the price is pain. The ego doesn't surrender through comfort, it surrenders through friction, through the fire of letting go, through the fall that teaches us we were never meant to hold on that tight in the first place. You were not born to remain untouched. You were born to be melted, remolded, made luminous through the process. When God breaks you, it's not a mistake, it's an act of divine craftsmanship. You are the clay, life is the sculptor, and every crack, every fracture is where the light is meant to enter. So if you feel like life is tearing you apart, do not panic. Do not run, sit with it, breathe through it, because what breaks is not you, it's everything that's not truly you. And what remains is your essence, stronger, clearer, free. One day you'll look back at the ruins and smile, not because they hurt any less, but because you see now, that wasn't destruction, that was sacred reconstruction. That was God not abandoning you, but remaking you, not to punish, to prepare. Destruction is not the end, it is sacred preparation. It is the unseen hand of life sweeping away the fragile layers we built in ignorance, not to punish us, but to clear the space for something deeper, something truer, something that cannot be destroyed again. And though the collapse feels cruel and sudden, it is often the slow mercy of the divine dismantling everything we were never meant to cling to in the first place. For what shatters is not the soul, it is the shell. And what dissolves is not our essence, but the illusions we mistook for identity destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation, a silent initiation into a life you did not choose, but were always destined to grow into. And when the job disappears, or the relationship dies, or the dream disintegrates before your eyes, you are not being stripped of purpose, but of pretense. You are not being thrown into chaos, but into recalibration. And the pain you feel is the birth cry of a new alignment, pulling you away from what no longer serves and into what you had. No idea was possible until you had nothing left to lose. Destruction is not the end, it is sacred preparation. And if you listen closely in the ache, you will hear the whisper of your becoming echoing through the emptiness, reminding you that even winter is not death, but a resting, a hidden weaving, a slow becoming underneath the frozen surface. And so too are you being rewritten in the stillness after the storm, not erased but reauthored. Not broken, but made available for a wholeness that could never have reached you through comfort. Destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation. And though your heart may beg for answers, plead for logic, or try to stitch together the ruins of what once felt safe, the sacred doesn't offer explanations, it offers transformation. And this path is not walked with certainty, but with surrender. Not with clarity, but with trust, because the soul does not evolve through guarantees, it evolves through fire. And fire does not ask permission to burn away what's false. Destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation, because strength is not forged in moments of triumph, but in the aftermath of collapse. When your hands are empty and your spirit is tired, and yet something in you still whispers, keep going. And that whisper is not weakness, it is the first breath of the new version of you rising. The one who does not build safety from what is outside, but becomes unshakable from within. Because the breaking taught you that nothing real can ever be taken, destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation, the divine invitation that looks like loss, but is actually liberation, the grace that wears the mask of grief but hides a deeper resurrection. And every ending you did not want becomes the soil where your truest becoming can take root. not rushed, not forced, but surrendered into like a seed, trusting the darkness to become something holy. And in that darkness, you are not buried. You are planted. Destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation, and the ruins you stand in now, not signs of failure. They are the bones of your old self, making room for the one who sees clearly, who walks gently, who no longer clings to what is dying but breathes in what is eternal. And this version of you will not be built by ambition or image or applause, but by depth, by quiet, by courage born from enduring what you thought would destroy you. Destruction is not the end. It is sacred preparation. And so let the walls fall, let the identity shatter, let the plan collapse, because the one who walks away from the ashes is not less but more aligned, more whole, more alive than ever before. And what rises from the wreckage is not a victim of life's cruelty, but a witness to its mysterious mercy. For even in the breaking, life was not ending, it was beginning again, in a way only the soul could understand and only time would reveal. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. It is the sacred fire through which the soul sheds its false layers, not to destroy but to awaken, not to diminish but to deepen. And though the mind may label it as suffering, the heart, if it listens, knows it is the language of growth. Whisper in the ache of letting go, in the silence after loss, in the quiet crumble of all that was once certain. For pain arrives not to shame you, but to shape you, to stretch you beyond the version of yourself that comfort would have kept confined. Pain is not punishment. It is transformation, and though the path it carves may seem cruel, it is the most honest of teachers, one that does not flatter, does not bargain, but simply reveals. It strips away the masks we worn too long, the stories we repeated until we forgot they were lies. And in that nakedness, we finally meet ourselves, not the person we present to the world, but the one buried beneath years of pretending. And it is through that raw meeting that healing begins, not as an event, but as a slow unraveling into truth. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. Because only through discomfort do we stop running, only through heartbreak do we stop clinging, only through sorrow do we begin to see clearly. And the clarity that follows pain is not logical, it is cellular. It is the body remembering what the soul always knew, that everything is temporary. And in that fleetingness lies the invitation to be fully alive, not just in joy, but in grief, not just in celebration, but in surrender, for pain has never been the enemy. It has always been the threshold. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. And the deeper it cuts, the more space it makes for something real to emerge. Because surface living cannot hold depth, and shallow smiles cannot hold truth. And so life must sometimes shake us down to the roots, not out of cruelty but necessity, so that what grows next is not a copy of who we were, but a reflection of who we were meant to become, someone who no longer runs from the fire but walks through it knowing the flames cannot burn. What is eternal? Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. And every tear you shed, every moment you fall on your knees thinking it was over, was actually a doorway disguised as defeat. For the soul does not rise in applause, it rises in silence, in solitude, in the spaces where nothing makes sense, and yet something within whispers, keep breathing. And that whisper is the voice of becoming, of being remade not despite the pain, but because of it. Not in the absence of suffering, but in its sacred presence. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation, the alchemy of spirit breaking through the illusions of ego. And though the process feels violent, though the unraveling feels unbearable, it is through this very undoing that freedom is born, because you were never meant to live wrapped in fear, confined by old identities, shackled to wounds you were taught to hide. And so pain rises like a tide, not to drown you, but to cleanse, not to punish, but to pull you back to shore, to yourself, to what is real and lasting beneath the noise. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. And even when you do not understand it, even when it feels unfair, even when all you can do is scream into the dark, the process continues gently and ruthlessly, breaking what was never meant to stay and revealing what was always meant to rise. And this rising may not be immediate, it may take seasons, but in time, you will look back and see not a trail of destruction, but a sacred path of becoming, marked not by wounds, but by the wisdom those wounds carved into your being. Pain is not punishment, it is transformation. And the person who emerges from it is not a victim, but a vessel, of grace, of truth, of a strength that was not learned in ease but earned in endurance. And 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 this 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 and this. The ego must crack for the soul to rise, and the rising is not loud, not dramatic, but subtle and holy, unfolding in everyday moments where we choose authenticity over approval, vulnerability over defense, compassion over competition. And in these choices made quietly and consistently, the soul takes root, not as something we find, but something we remember. And what was once hidden beneath ambition and fear begins to radiate effortlessly because the pressure to prove is gone, and in its place is the permission to be. The ego must crack for the soul to rise, and once it rises, we no longer fear the breaking, we welcome it. We bless the moments that brought us to our knees. We hold reverence for the losses that stripped us bare. Because we see now they were not the end but the threshold, not punishment but preparation. And in the aftermath, we carry a softness that is not weakness but wisdom, a quiet power that does not shout but simply is. For the soul needs no defense, no mask, no applause. It only needed space to breathe, and now it does. Endlessly true growth is not gentle, it is raw, deep and necessary. It does not arrive like a soft breeze or a whispered promise, but like a storm that uproots the parts of you you thought were permanent. It peels back comfort like old skin and asks you to walk through fire barefoot. Not because life is cruel, but because ease does not awaken what is buried, and buried beneath your routine, beneath your certainty, beneath all the ways you've learned to survive. Life's a version of you that only emerges through rupture, through resistance, through the kind of pain that demands you pay attention. True growth is not gentle. It is raw, deep and necessary. And it often begins where everything falls apart, where the plan no longer works, where the smile fades and the truth spills out, trembling and unsure. And in those moments, you are not failing, you are becoming. Because growth is not a polished process. It is messy, it is inconvenient. It shows up uninvited and refuses to leave until you've shed every excuse, every lie, every piece of yourself you clung to, out of fear of being seen. Without it, true growth is not gentle. It is raw, deep, and necessary part is what we resist the most because we want change without the challenge. We want freedom without the falling. But the soul is not interested in surface level transformation. It is only interested in what is in what is real. And real change does not flatter your ego, it confronts, it breaks the mirror you've been staring into and asks you to see with your inner eyes, to feel without numbing, to walk forward even when everything inside you is begging to turn back. True growth is not gentle. It is raw, deep and necessary. And in that rawness you will grieve. Not only what you lost, but who you used to be, the version of you that didn't know better, that stayed quiet, that played small, that carried everyone else's expectations like they were your own. And grief is part of the transformation, because before you can become, you must honor what you outgrew. You must make peace with the pieces that no longer fit, and only then can you step into the unfamiliar space where something new is being born. True growth is not gentle, it is raw, deep and necessary. And you'll know you're growing not because life gets easier, but because your relationship to life changes. You stop running from discomfort, you stop avoiding the hard questions, you stop pretending that silence means peace. And instead you lean, you allow, you observe, you stay, even when it hurts, even when it doesn't make sense, because deep down you know that this is the work, this is the becoming, and you no longer want to escape it, you want to embody. True growth is not gentle, it is raw, deep and necessary, and sometimes it looks like sitting in the dark and letting the tears fall without fixing them. Sometimes it looks like walking away from what once felt like everything, because you finally realize it's costing you your soul. Sometimes it looks like speaking truth into spaces that only ever celebrated your silence. And in those moments, you're not losing, you're remembering, you're reclaiming, you're returning to the person you were before the world told you who. True growth is not gentle, it is raw, deep and necessary, and it will ask everything from you. It will ask you to be honest when it's easier to lie. It will ask you to rest when you'd rather distract. It will ask you to forgive when your pride still wants revenge, and these aren't grand gestures. They're quiet revolutions that happen in the privacy of your own heart. And every time you choose the harder thing, the truer thing, the thing that stretches you rather than soothes you, you're evolving. Not for applause, but for alignment. True growth is not gentle. It is raw, deep and necessary. And once you walk through the fire, you will no longer fear the burning because you'll see what it gave you. Clarity, resilience, truth, and a kind of inner peace that doesn't come from the absence of challenge, but from the acceptance of your own. And you'll carry that strength not like armor, but like light, a quiet reminder that you are no longer who you were, and you didn't get here by accident. You got here because you allowed the breaking to become your becoming you are not being broken apart. You are being broken open. And though it feels like the ground beneath you has vanished, like the pieces of who you were are scattered beyond recognition, this is not the end of you. It is the unveiling of you, the sacred unfolding that life initiates when the version you've been clinging to is too small for the truth you were born to live. And so it tears through illusion, through attachment, through all that kept you safe but stifled not to destroy your essence, but to set it free, to make room for something more real, more raw, more whole to emerge from within. You are not being broken apart. You are being broken open because the soul does not grow behind walls, it grows in vulnerability, in surrender, in the spaces where your defenses fall and your heart has no choice but to feel everything. And in that feeling, however sharp, however heavy, you begin to remember that aliveness is not comfort, that awakening is not sweet, and that what you thought was weakness is the ache. The silence is actually the place where healing begins its quiet, persistent work. You are not being broken apart, you are being broken open. And the pain that you carry is not proof of failure, but proof that the heart is still beating beneath the weight, still loving, still trying. And while the mind screams for answers, the soul is asking only for presence. Not solutions, but awareness. Not control, but trust. Because the breaking is not a punishment to be fixed, but an invitation to be met, not with resistance but with reverence, because within the breaking lies the opening. And within the opening, the awakening, you are not being broken apart, you are being broken open. And what falls away in this process is not yours to grieve but to release, because it was never truly you. It was the fear you inherited, you constructed, the masks you wore to survive. And though letting them go feels like loss, it is actually freedom. It is the sacred shedding of what cannot carry you forward. And though you may tremble in the unknown, though you may mourn what once held you are not losing yourself, you are losing what kept you from yourself. You are not being broken apart, you are being broken open, and that openness will hurt before it heals. It will ache before it liberates, because everything that was buried begins to rise. Old wounds, old stories, old patterns that surface not to haunt you but to leave you. And your only task is to stay with it, to breathe through it, to let the wave wash through without drowning in it. And in time you'll see, what felt like unraveling was really revelation. What felt like ending was the sacred beginning. You didn't know you needed. You are not being broken apart, you are being broken open. And you may not recognize yourself in this space between the no longer and the not yet, but that's okay. Because becoming is not about returning to who you were. It's about discovering who you are underneath it all, in the silence, in the stillness, in the empty spaces where everything familiar has fallen away and all that remains is your breath, your presence, your willingness to trust that life knows what it's doing, even when you do not. You are not being broken apart, you are being broken open. And this opening will make you softer where you were once guarded, braver where you were once afraid, truer where you once performed. And you won't need to explain the change, you won't need to justify the quiet strength that begins to grow inside you, because those who see with their soul will see with their soul, will feel it. And those who don't are no longer meant to journey with you. And that too is part of the breaking, the beautiful release of everything that cannot meet the real you. You are not being broken apart, you are being broken open. And though it may take time, though you may walk through fire and shadow, though the night may feel endless, the dawn will come, not because you forced it, but because you endured it, because you trusted the process even when you doubted the path. And one day you will rise, not with all the answers, but with a heart wide enough to hold the mystery. And in that moment you will know, the breaking did not ruin you, it revealed you.